sold that game without a disc in it, I would probably still buy it because I really would want to play that game. But there
Cool, so you're admitting you'd be part of the problem. Just buy the digital copy then. Don't buy the physical.
are like exceptions to every rule, where it's like most games, like if Nintendo did that with the next Zelda game and the next Mario, probably do it with those too. Even though I wouldn't like it, I would do it.
So you're admitting that you hate all of this stuff, but you'll continue to give them their money. They don't give a fuck what your opinion is, bro. They give a fuck whether or not you give them money. If you give them money and you didn't like it, they don't give a shit. You gave them money. That's all they care about. Your money. If you really want to send them the message that this isn't okay, then you got to show some fucking willpower and not buy that game. You just got to eat that. You just got to make that principled stance. Make that stance that, nope, I won't accept this. And don't. But don't make videos and whine about it and then say, I'm still giving them my money, though, because I want to play the game. Then they got you by the balls. They got you hooked. Like a drug dealer who gave you the first hit for free, they know you're coming back. Switch owner 2 banned by Nintendo for playing a used game. Fired up.
This comes to us from the Metro, UK. Switch 2 owner banned for playing second-hand Switch 1 games. Now, this story goes way deeper than I initially thought it was. I'm like, how can you get banned for playing a second-hand used game?
Yeah.
And in the
how can they tell?
Details of this, you find out that
I'm going to guess it's that it's not intentional. It's some kind of glitch associated with their new virtual game card system, is what I'm going to guess. And it's something about the way the Switch 2 reads Nintendo 1 game cards, because Nintendo 1 games have also been like swapped over to that virtual game card system, but I'm guessing it wasn't a seamless transition. And they have dropped the ball or fucked up somewhere, which is all the more reason not to buy this thing at launch. Like, this thing does not deserve your support. If any of this is true, I don't know. Let's hear what he says about it first.
Nintendo, basically, if you get a MiG Switch and you rip the copy of your game onto your MiG and then you play...
Oh, so it's the MiG Switch thing. Well, that's not exactly a used game then, is it? That's the MiG Switch, which, I mean, technically it is your used game, but you're dumping a copy of it onto that. And the Switch 1 will read the MiG Switch, but if you put a MiG Switch, I warned that this would happen, that you could put a MiG Switch into a Switch 2, and it will basically be weaponized. It'll nuke the console. If you put a MiG Switch into a Switch 2, a MiG cart into a Switch 2, that Switch 2 will get banned. Possibly even bricked. Even though you haven't hacked that console, you haven't modded it in any way, it should just not read the MiG, and then you wouldn't be allowed to use it. But apparently it does read and load those Switch 1 games you have on that MiG Switch, and then gets the console banned. Which, I mean, it sounds like a fault of Nintendo for not putting enough security on it to block a MiG Switch, but instead of blocking the MiG Switch, they're banning its users. So, more reason not to, but now you've essentially created a weapon, because anybody with a MiG Switch, which you can buy them for like $50. So, anybody who really wanted to be a dick could buy one of these MiG Switches and then just walk around and start popping them into random switches and just get them banned. Pretty easy. I mean, it's kind of shitty, but you could do it.
That copy on your MiG, on your Switch, it basically connects to the internet, sends a notice to Nintendo that that code or whatever that was copied has been used on that card.
Okay, so this guy has no idea what a MiG Switch is or how any of this works.
And then if you try to play that card, it will detect that a duplicate was made, because now that card is being played after it was played on something else.
Nope, it's not because it was played on something else. It's because a duplicate of the original game is being played. That's why. It's because the MiG cart isn't licensed by Nintendo, and they don't want you using those. Even though you can legally purchase the game, and you can legally make your own backup copy of it, and putting them on a MiG cart means that you can just, if your hard drive is full and you just want to carry your whole library around with you, that was a cool way to do it. You fill up your hard drive with the games that you always want on the system, and then you carry around 3 or 4 MIG carts with 10 or 12 games on them a piece, and you've got a full library on the go all the time. And it can be all games you own. They're at home. But since Nintendo can't verify that purchase is going to be their argument, then they ban it. That's why. It's not because it was played on something else first. The Switch 2 can be the only console you put the MIG switch in. It would still ban it.
Which tells Nintendo that you are using a MIG switch and that copy is not authorized. Again, that is the Cliff Notes version, and I'm probably got a lot of stuff wrong on it. But
yeah, you did. Is this not a pre-recorded video, or are you doing this live? I don't know, man. Maybe Google something. Or if you don't know how this works, then don't talk about it until you figure it out. I work in the IT field, so I know how this stuff works. It's not super complicated. You're playing a backup copy of a game, which they don't like. They don't want you to do that. So they're going to ban your system if you do it. We won't get into how it's totally legal to play backup copies of games, but I digress.
That's basically what's happening as far as I understand it. And now people are finding out that you can copy those games onto a MIG switch, play the MIG switch on your Switch 2, sell your physical copy of your game to a secondhand store like GameStop or whatever, have someone go in and buy that copy, put it, like legitimately purchase it with real money at a real store and pay taxes on it and everything, put it into your Switch 2 and get banned from Nintendo.
Is that working with legitimate copies of the game or just MIG switches? Because I'm doubting the authenticity here of this if you didn't even know how the MIG switch worked. I'm pretty sure it bans the system that used the MIG switch. If you're using a legitimate copy, you're probably fine. Unless it's like this rare case where the copied version on the MIG switch was used before the actual game was. And since they both, have the same ID number, it's now picking up the original copy's ID number as being fake, and the fake one is being real, unless it's tricking the servers like that. But I'm pretty sure that's not how that works. I don't know how much I believe this. I would need to see this in action.
Because it detects that serial number is being used or was used somewhere else duplicated. And now you get in trouble for it. The games in question weren't...
Yeah, again, I would have to see an actual, what's the article he's reading? I may have to look this up myself, because I'm pretty sure he's not pulling the right information from this, or he's getting confused. I don't believe that they would... I'm pretty sure that I would hope that Nintendo has a way to tell the difference between a legitimate copy and a MIG switch, and a game being run off of a MIG switch. Not just once this game has been used once. No, because then all used games would be getting people banned. Not just ones used from a MIG switch first. Yeah, so because if you're saying that once the game is registered on their network, if it's used on a different console, then they detect it as fraudulent, then that would mean that you could play a game legitimately on your Switch, beat it, take that copy to GameStop, trade it in, and then GameStop would take that used copy, sell it to somebody else, they put it in their Switch, and they'd be banned because the serial number from that game was already registered to a different console. Because if that was legitimately how it worked, we would have a lot more reports of this than just the people who used it on a MIG switch first. Yeah, I think he's misreading what this says. What does it actually fucking say? What does it actually fucking say? New concerns have arisen around Nintendo's strict policies on how you use the Switch 2. It's consumer pricey, purely game console popular, but has already been Switch 2 owners that claimed using a second-hand Switch 1 games that he bought from. Yeah, I don't know how much I believe these. I don't know how much I believe these claims. Was his second-hand... Oh, yeah, let me get the Discord up here, too. Was the second-hand game he's using on a MIG switch? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like it's on a MIG switch. Like the secondhand game he's using was on a MIG switch. And if that's the case, then you didn't get banned for using a secondhand game. You got banned for using the MIG switch. Which, I mean, it's different. Not really. But, I mean, it's one of those things that's not illegal, but it's like a shady area. It's like a gray area. Because you're allowed to make backup copies, but the MIG switch itself is not licensed by Nintendo and not an approved method of loading those games. So maybe the method in which you're loading those games you made a legal copy of is what the problem is. That's like, it's one of those shady areas. Like how against the law, or is it? Well, it's not against the law, but how much right do they have to take away the use of your game because you used it in an unofficial means? Like, how much control, and that comes back to the argument of like, how much control should you as a consumer be allowed to have over the hardware you purchase? Because that's what Louis Rossmann was fighting Apple for, and the whole right to repair thing is you should have full control over the hardware you purchased. You own that hardware. And of course, these companies say otherwise. So laws would have to be passed around consoles in order to enforce some of this stuff. But yeah, like how much control should you have over the console itself? I say total control. I think that they should do what Xbox does, where Xbox has deterred complete hacking of their of their Xbox One, and they started it with the Xbox One and they're continuing it with the Series. People don't have a reason to hack the console if you give them the tools in a controlled environment to access the things they would want to hack the console to access anyway. So instead of making it so you have to hack the console in order to get access to, like homebrew apps or the ability to run your own custom apps and that kind of stuff, you can pay Microsoft $20 to activate your, to switch your Xbox over to developer mode. And while you're in developer mode, you can't play any store purchase games, but you can load whatever, custom games or software you want onto it for developer testing purposes. But people use them to run emulators. Like, it won't run backup copies of games, so you can't use it to like steal games, but it's a controlled environment. So now people have access to the stuff they would need to quote unquote hack the console anyway. And Microsoft made a profit by giving them that access instead of them, taking that access through unofficial means. The Xbox hasn't been hacked. People aren't pirating Xbox games, but they can put emulators on it. They can do all that. They can run they can run homebrew games that they made themselves. And you can swap your console back and forth between developer mode and retail mode. So when you want to play your games, switch it over to retail mode. When you want to play emulators, homebrew, all that cool testing stuff you can get off the internet, all those custom apps that users make that can make your Xbox do cool shit, including running other operating systems like Linux, then you switch it over to developer mode. It's not for everybody, but those people who want access to that kind of things have an avenue to get it without hacking the console. That also made Microsoft money. And it's a controlled environment, so they can't use it for nefarious purposes. So Nintendo could definitely learn a lot from, Nintendo and Sony could learn a lot from Microsoft there.
Even Switch 2 titles. New concerns have arisen over Nintendo's strict policies over how you use the Switch 2. Although, for the moment, it does seem like there's a solution. Nintendo gets away with a lot of negative consumer practices purely because their games and consoles are so popular. But there's already been concern about their ability to put the Switch 2 permanently offline if you use mod carts, which are often used for playing pirated games. But not always. That's the problem Nintendo faces with this. And legally, they have no jurisdiction to do what they're doing. I have a
Yeah, but who's going to sue Nintendo to get this law in place to change this? Like, who's going to do that? You? Because no one has the money to go up against them. Is what they're doing legally questionable? Sure. But you have to have the money to fight them in court and win to prove that now. And no one has that kind of money.
feeling if this went all the way to federal court, that Nintendo would actually lose it because
I mean, maybe. It could go either way. They would have to, they would be suing the company that makes the MIG switches, and they probably wouldn't be suing them because they're playing, copied games. They would be suing them about their unofficial access to whatever it is that they're doing from outside the console. That's an unofficial way to load those games. Like they would. I mean, I could see it going either way, but I don't think that the company that makes the MIG switches has the money needed to actually take this all the way to the Supreme Court. And damn sure no player that gets banned has that.
do not have the right to tell people what they're allowed to play based off of the games that they're ripping on the device that they purchased. They're trying to act like, no, this is their ecosystem. You're not allowed to do that. It's like, no, I bought the device. It's mine. I can do whatever the hell I want to do with it.
Yeah, but according to their end user license agreement, you can't. So you'd have to win that part first, because according to their end user license agreement, no, you don't own this. You absolutely don't. I'm gonna die. You don't actually own it, and they have the right to fucking break your console if they want. You have to use it the way they want you to use it.
And you know what to tell me. I'm not pirating games. I'm ripping them myself and playing them because I want to be able to play them all on one cart instead of having to carry around 20 of my games around.
The argument there is you can buy an SD card to do that. Buy a digital copy of the game. Like what they would argue in court is, Your Honor, we already give them an avenue to do this. Digital copies of games, actually our digital game cartridges mean that they can already do this. They don't need to buy this tool which lets them load it from an unofficial means. They can just buy an SD card to expand the amount of memory in the console to load more games. We already give them an avenue to do this. So that argument falls a little flat. Like, you're going to need to do better than that.
Who's Nintendo to tell me otherwise? I can do.
I mean, for the record, you're in the right. You should have the right to do that, but to actually win that argument in court and secure that right, you're going to have a better argument than this.
Whatever that I want. I fucking own it. What are we doing here? What the hell?
No, that's what Stop Killing Games is all about. The fact that you don't own it. You don't own your games. You're essentially renting them, and they can shut them down at any time. So first, we have to secure ownership by getting the Stop Killing Games thing to go through and get that to actually made into law. And then the next step is to get what you're talking about, where you have control over the hardware itself and how you play those games. Baby steps, man. Baby steps.
Since when do they have control over my purchase after I give them money? No, that's not how.
Since about 2008 is when they started writing this into the end user license agreements. And to their credit, they've kept those servers up for a long time, but we're starting to see games getting shut down now that were purchased way back then that people thought they owned and have a physical copy on their shelf and realize they don't actually own a copy of the game.
How this works. And if they're trying to say, no, it is how it works, then that's basically them saying that they are enabling piracy, that you are welcome to steal whatever you want because you technically don't own what you buy from them. If that's
no, that doesn't mean you can steal, though. I mean, if you're making an argument of morality, then I agree with you. I have no qualms about people pirating games. Contrary to popular belief, the reason most people pirate is because piracy offers them a means to get the product in the form they want it, because the people they purchased it from didn't provide them what they wanted. But piracy can. Louis Rossman has a good video about this on Netflix, where he paid for a subscription to Netflix to watch a movie in 4K because he didn't feel like setting up a Plex server and downloading it and doing all that stuff himself, and he didn't want to buy a physical copy. He just wanted to watch it right then. So he paid Netflix for a month of Netflix to watch the movie in 4K and Netflix wasn't providing the movie in 4K. There were all these stipulations around like how you had to watch it to actually get it to play in 4K on Netflix. That Netflix wasn't actually supplying people with 4K versions of movies streaming unless you met these crazy amount of requirements that they had that were very specific. Which made him angry because he tried it multiple different ways. Tried it on his computer, tried it on his TV, tried it on his phone. Like, he tried to meet all of these requirements and only got it to play in 4K under very specific means. And that's not the way he wanted to watch it. He wanted to watch it in his, on his big television in his media room. So he ended up pirating the movie where he could get it in 4K more reliably. The picture was clearer. There wasn't, like, even when he got it in 4K, it had a lot of artifacting. It just wasn't, like, it wasn't providing what the service was promising. But he could go pirate that movie in 4K and get it instantly, and it would be of the quality that he was expecting it to be at. So as long as these companies keep charging you for things and then not providing what they're charging you, I can justify piracy. And video games not allowing you to own the thing you paid for and having control over the thing you paid for and being able to take it away from you, I can justify piracy. You can't play The Crew right now. Ubisoft shut that game down. Even though it has a single player mode and it doesn't need to be online to play every game mode in it, they shut down the online servers. And that game won't run unless it checks in with those servers first to validate that you own a copy of the game. Once those servers are shut down, access to the entirety of the game is gone, even the single player portions. However, if you have a pirated copy of The Crew that disabled all that shit so that, you could pirate it, well, the pirated copy still works. Because it doesn't need to check in with Ubisoft's servers. The pirates removed that check-in that the game had built into it so that you could play it without needing to check into those servers. So piracy is now providing you with a playable copy of the game when the company wouldn't. So if you stole it, you can still play it. If you bought it, you can't. Give me the justification. Right fucking now. I need somebody to give me the justification. All those people screaming that piracy is theft. Give me the justification right now for why it's theft to download, to pirate a copy of The Crew. That if you went out and pirated that today so you could play it, how is that theft? There is no legal means to purchase it or play it. You have to pirate it to play it. So how is that theft?
That's what they're saying. So they're actually encouraging more people to try to pirate from them.
I mean, I'll agree they're encouraging more people to try and pirate. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean they're saying piracy is okay. Like, he has a general misunderstanding for how all this stuff works. I kind of thought this video would be more informed than this, but showed up randomly in the feed, and I was curious to see if there was any truth behind this clickbaity title he has, and it just seems as if he's misunderstood what this is and what it means.
It's very frustrating to take this approach, but then again, it's Nintendo. Is anyone really that surprised? Nintendo apparently realized they were secondhand when he attempted to download patches for them. This one, I skipped it here. Now a different problem has arisen from a Switch 2 owner that claims he was banned for using secondhand Switch 1 games that he bought from a Facebook marketplace. Nintendo apparently realized they were secondhand when he attempted to download patches for them. When he started them up on the Switch 2, at this point, he claims he was banned. While it's not something that's been widely reported by others, it does raise obvious concerns for the future. According to D-Manthe on Reddit, they were able to unban themselves after speaking to Nintendo support, showing them the Facebook listings and photos of the cartridges.
So they proved ownership. So if they are playing actual, used copies of games and getting banned for it, then it does sound like that Nintendo's aggressive way of trying to stop these MIG switches, once that went viral on social media, was poorly thought out and has now started to affect legitimate owners, which is what I said would happen, is that you found a way to weaponize the MIG switch so people can just weaponize this cartridge as a way to nuke switches, and that the way that they're checking for these MIG switches, if it's tied to the game and not the MIG cart itself, then it could end up, creating a bunch of false positives, which it sounds like that's what it's doing, especially if you're able to call Nintendo, prove you on the game, and then they agree with you and unban you. That's pretty much them admitting that you got a false positive. Oh, that's a bad look.
What exactly Nintendo thought was going on is unclear, since it's hardly unusual to sell secondhand games, but they likely believed they were pirated games, which seems to be their main concern at the moment. Yeah, because it probably was copied onto, it's probably ripped, copied onto someone's MIG switch, and then they sold their copy of the game. Which, oh, by the way.
Hey, but ripping the game doesn't mean it's pirated, though. A ripped copy of a game doesn't necessarily mean pirated. If the person using that ripped copy is the legitimate owner of the game, and they just want to keep that game on their shelf or put it onto a MIG switch, they don't have to carry a bunch of cartridges around, you're legally allowed to do that. You're allowed to copy the games you own. That is exactly what emulation is supposed to be used for, not piracy. It's supposed to be used for, I want a better way to play all the games I have for Switch 1 games. I want to play these Switch 1 games I've purchased on an emulator on my PC so I can play them at a higher frame rate, a higher resolution, and get a better experience. I'm legally allowed to do that. So I buy a game, I bring it home, I dump the game onto my computer and make a copy, and then I play that on the emulator. Absolutely fine. You're totally legally allowed to do that. That's the intended purpose. So for Nintendo to assume that every single copy of a game that's been ripped is for the purpose of piracy, that is wrong on their count. Especially if you can prove that they're banning you for not pirating those games, then you could have grounds for, you'd have grounds for a lawsuit, but it would be hard for an individual to win. I would say that this would have to happen on a big enough scale to get a class action lawsuit going. Which good luck, I guess. This is one of those things where they can prove that they're overstepping their bounds and that they fucked up, but actually getting them punished for it's a different story. That's good luck, bud. Kind of situation there.
Here's the conundrum Nintendo has with that too: is that how does Nintendo know that they ripped it onto their MIG switch, and then after they sold their game, they're like, "Well, I sold it. I don't own it anymore. I'm going to delete it from my MIG switch." Nintendo doesn't know.
Right? They are making an assumption, but to legally punish them for making that assumption costs a lot of money that no one has, so they get away with it.
Be following all the laws, doing everything properly, appropriately. I'm not saying everyone does this, by the way, but giving someone the benefit of the doubt of being an upstanding citizen.
Right, you're innocent until proven guilty. You're supposed to give them that benefit of the doubt. You're supposed to assume that copy that they're playing is legitimate unless you have some kind of proof that they stole it. You shouldn't just assume that anyone doing something is a criminal just because that thing they're doing can be used for criminal means. Because that's how it's supposed to work. That's what innocent till proven guilty means. But that's never the way it works. Everybody always assumes that, oh, he's pirating, he's poor, he's pirating, he's stealing, he's pirating, whatever.
Just wants to do the right thing. And they're getting piled in with everyone else because Nintendo has full authority for this. And they shouldn't. Groofus says, Nintendo getting into construction, selling all these bricks.
Okay, so he is live streaming. This isn't. I was going to say if this video is editing and this is the level of research you've done, this is bad. But it doesn't sound like he's. It sounds like he's live streaming.
Although Nintendo is pushing digital downloads more with the Switch 2 than other previous consoles, which, by the way, true. I went to Target tonight after dinner, and I was like, "Oh, let me go look at the Switch aisle, and I want to see what it looks like with the Switch 2 games." And it was terrible. Like every Switch 2 game had the DLC code banner on the front of it. I'm like, why would anyone buy any of these? What's the point of it? Just go download the game if you want to play it. And at that point, I'm not going to.
Because they're banking on, and this is what Stop Killing Games needs to lean on in order to win their argument about game ownership, is because they're banking on people not paying attention. They're banking on you not noticing. They're banking on your grandma's buying you a game and she doesn't know how this shit works. Because she believes, rightfully so, that when you purchase a thing, you own the thing. I bought it for you. I got it off the store shelf. See, it's yours. She doesn't understand how the internet works. She doesn't understand how licenses and ownership of games works. She still thinks it works like it did back in the days of the, regular and Super Nintendo, where you buy a copy of the game, you just have a copy of the game. You can keep on a shelf forever, and 20 years later, you can still play it. She doesn't understand that's not how it works anymore. She doesn't understand that, putting this game in the system doesn't load the game. You still have to get on the internet. So the game's not actually on the cartridge. Yeah, she doesn't understand that. And they're banking on a bunch of normies not understanding that or not paying attention to it, or just normalizing that practice and having people expect that that's just how it works now.
Spend $80 on a downloadable title on my Switch 2. No, who's doing this? Give me the...
Unfortunately, all of the Nintendo simps are doing this. A lot of people. Unfortunately. We're outnumbered, bud, me and you. Hate to break it to you.
Physical, give me the game, give me everything with it, or you're not getting my money. That's kind of always been the way. The only way around that is if, say, Rockstar and Take-Two put out Grand Theft Auto 6, sold that game without a disc in it. I would probably still buy it because I really would want to play that game. But
cool, so you're admitting you'd be part of the problem. Just buy the digital copy then. Don't buy the physical. But they've been doing this for a while in some shape, form, or fashion. This is the worst it's been. It's only gotten worse. But this started way back when I was working at GameStop. 2010-ish. But I remember this happening. If you bought a used copy of a game, you couldn't play the multiplayer. You had to buy a multiplayer pass. So that's kind of the early version of this, where, yeah, the game's on the disc, but putting the disc in anyone's console other than the account that has the pass doesn't get you online. So you're getting half a game. You're getting half a game now. What the fuck ever, man?
Are exceptions to every rule, where it's most games, if Nintendo did that with the next Zelda game and the next Mario, probably do it with those too. Even though I wouldn't like it, I would do it.
So you're admitting that you hate all of this stuff, but you'll continue to give them their money. They don't give a fuck what your opinion is, bro. They give a fuck whether or not you give them money. If you give them money and you didn't like it, they don't give a shit. You gave them money. That's all they care about. Your money. If you really want to send them the message that this isn't okay, then you got to show some fucking willpower and not buy that game. You just got to eat that. You just got to make that principled stance. Make that stance that, nope, I won't accept this. And don't. But don't make videos and fucking whine about it and then say, I'm still giving them my money, though, because I want to play the game. Then they got you by the balls. They got you hooked. Like a drug dealer who gave you the first hit for free, they know you're coming back.
But for the most part, all these other games, no, I'm not going to do that. Why? Physical game sales are still much more prevalent on Nintendo formats than PlayStation and Xbox, which is true.
That is only because the Nintendo consoles are mobile. And people want to be able to pop a game in on the go and not have to worry about connecting to Wi-Fi somewhere if they're not near Wi-Fi, and be able to play it. They want to be able to carry their collection with them and not have to worry about, downloading something every time they want to switch a game. So that's why. When you're at home, you can queue up all those downloads and go to work. When you take your Switch with you, you want to pull it out on your break at work or on your lunch break, well, now you got to wait for that game to download. That's why. They want the physical copies on the games for that reason. Which is why this is a bigger deal on Switch than it has been on other consoles. The Switch, for the record, the Switch 2 is not the first game to not have the game on the disc. Do not have they've done this. Microsoft and Sony have both done this before, but it didn't make as big a headlines because people are kind of used to having to download day one patches and update stuff at this point, which also shouldn't happen, but people are used to that at this point. But there's nothing worse than popping a game key card into your console on the go while you're on a road trip or while you're blah, blah, blah. Some kid doing it. Also, more kids buy their consoles than adults. And there's nothing worse than popping that into your system while you're out and about and not near Wi-Fi, and then not being able to play the game you have a physical copy of in your hand because it wants you to connect to the internet to download it. That's a little more acceptable with home consoles. It shouldn't be acceptable at all, but people tend to accept it easier with Sony and Xboxes, with Sony and with PlayStation and Xbox than they do with Nintendo for that reason.
But that's only because the other ones are really low, not because Nintendo's are really high. That means secondhand games are commonplace, and while traditional piracy is relatively rare on Nintendo consoles,
this guy just has a general failure to understand how this market works and why these companies make the decisions they make. He just seems to misunderstand, just in general, how this business works. Which is fine. He's coming at it from the very normie perspective of a gamer who just wants to play games. But if you're going to be like researching it and making content about it, you should probably know a little more than this. I mean, it's cool to see the the normie approach to it, like what the normie thinks and the effect that like this has on the normie brain. But he just demonstrated for you the effect that they want. They know you're not going to like it. They don't care if you like it. They care if you'll pay for it. And the normie perspective is, I don't like it. It shouldn't be this way. But if it's a really good game like Zelda, then I'll buy. If it's a really good game like Rockstar, then okay. Well, when you start making carve-outs for it and caveats for it, then they know they got you.
Fake cartridges are still easily found on eBay and other online sources, while the mod cart that Nintendo has already banned is the sort of thing used to download pirated games. The long-standing problem is
games copied from a physical cartridge. It doesn't always mean pirated. I hate when they frame it as piracy instead of just saying it plays copied games. Like, I don't like their choice of wording there because it does imply that people just use them for stealing.
Is that Nintendo games,
which isn't exclusively what they're used for. I'm sure lots do, but that's not their intended purpose.
Games are rarely discounted by Nintendo or retailers, and so secondhand games are vital for many fans.
Right, which is also why used games are more prevalent on Nintendo consoles than any other console, because Nintendo never puts their shit on sale. So if you want to get Zelda cheaper than the $10 they might, do during a sale every now and then. I think the lowest you could ever get Zelda in its entirety, Breath of the Wild, even to this day, I think the lowest it's ever been officially is $40, maybe? But if you want to get it, for $20, 5 years after it launches, like you can most games, you have to buy it used. The used market for Switch games is so high because Nintendo, again, doesn't provide patient customers with those discounts that they're used to getting as a reward for their patience. They're risking spoilers, they're risking all this stuff to wait for the game to go on sale, and then you never put it on sale. Then they're going to get tired of waiting and they're going to go buy it used. So if you want to stop used game sales, put your shit on sale on a regular basis. Have like a policy that once the game's been out for 6 months or a year, then we'll, boom, slice it in half off. What happened to these programs that like Nintendo used to do? Do you guys remember the Nintendo Selects? Like PlayStation has the greatest hits games, and they still do that to this day. So you can get their games after they're a certain amount of time old, then they re-release the game as a greatest hits version of the game at like half the price. And Nintendo used to do that with its games. They were called Nintendo Selects, and they would take their games from the 3DS and the 2DS era, re-release them in new packaging that said Nintendo Selects with a flat price tag of like $20. So you could get those old games that everyone's already played at that point, your old Mario, your old Zeldas, etc., for $20. You knew that if you waited, if you were a budget gamer, then that was your reward for waiting. Yeah, you had to avoid spoilers for a while. But if you could do that, then you get it cheaper. That's supposed to be the trade-off. And Nintendo took away that trade-off. So of course everybody turned to the used market to get that reward for being a patient gamer. I'm a patient gamer. I rarely buy games at launch unless it's one I really, really want. Like, that game has to earn my money to get it at full price because I think games are just too expensive. I don't think most games can justify their price tag at launch, so I don't buy most games at launch. It has to be one I really want, that I feel has really earned it. Most haven't. But as a patient gamer, I'm often rewarded for my patience by getting games cheaper or oftentimes even free. I'm glad I waited on Cyberpunk. I really want to play Cyberpunk. But Cyberpunk was a absolute fucking shit show at launch to the point that they had to refund people. And it's taken them a long time to get that game right. And now that they've finally gotten it right, it has frequently gone on sale, oftentimes for 50% off. And I didn't even have to wait to buy it. I hadn't even bought it yet, and I was going to here soon. Just hadn't got around to it yet. And then I logged into my PlayStation today and noticed that Cyberpunk was one of the games they're giving away for free as part of their PlayStation Plus monthly games. I just clicked the boom, add to my library button, and now I've got Cyberpunk. Right now, I can log in and play it in its entirety on my PlayStation right fucking now. For free. Didn't have to pay a dime. Is Nintendo doing that shit? They ain't even giving you, like, retro games free. Jesus. These fucking cracked out kids, man.
Order to be able to afford all the games they want. If Nintendo starts banning everyone for simply playing a secondhand game, then there's going to be chaos online. But hopefully they realize the issues before. It's almost like this article doesn't understand what actually happened, because I don't think it's two different consoles playing the same cart.
I don't think he understands what happened.
I could be misunderstanding.
I'm gonna need to look up. Yes, you are misunderstanding. I'm gonna need to look up this article, but you're not showing me the art. I'm gonna have to look up the article after this. Does he link it in his description?
Because you could have multiple Switches at your house swapping cards with each other. You can lend a card to your friend. I wouldn't imagine getting your console banned for that. What I'm thinking happened is whoever sold that game card ripped it first, and they had it. Their copy of it on a MIG switch.
I mean, even if they ripped a copy of it to a MIG switch, the original copy should never get a console banned. It just shouldn't. You should be able to detect which copy is coming off a MIG switch and which copy is coming off of a cartridge. They should have a way to detect that, not tie it to the game's serial number or to its key, because if that's the case, then they risk banning people just for playing used games, which I think is the point that this article is trying to make, but I'm going to have to read the actual like article after this.
Switch, and then it was telling Nintendo that it was being played or was played on two different carts. But regardless,
I think what happened is it's not just used games, or you'd see this more often. I think what happened is the original owner ripped it to his MIG switch so he could play it off the MIG switch. Then he traded it in, but kept his copy on the MIG switch. Then someone bought that game used and put it in their switch. So they have the legitimate copy in their switch. He's got the copy on his MIG switch. And what happened was, I think they both attempted to play that game at the same time. So the new owner bought the game and went to play it, while the original owner is playing his copy on the MIG switch that he no longer owns because he traded it in, but he's still playing it. And then at some point, they were both logged in at the same time, playing the same game with the same serial number, and that threw up a red flag. And Nintendo had a 50-50 chance of flagging the person on the MIG switch or the person with the original copy. And they chose the wrong person. They chose the person who used it second instead of the person who originally, loaded in their switch. And the switch that used it second is the one that bought the used copy. The switch that used it first is the one that bought it, copied it, and traded it in. So they basically just picked the wrong person to ban. Which does point out a flaw with Nintendo. They should be able to detect the MIG switch loading itself instead of just tying it to the game serial number, because that's what could happen. Now, this wouldn't happen with any used game ever, just tying it to the serial number, unless that used game had been copied. but they should have a way to detect the copy and not the original game. So this is highlighting a problem on their end, but it's not going to be a super common problem. It's not going to happen with every used game like the article, like he's interpreted to mean. I need to read the article. I'm not going to say the article has written it that way. I'm going to say that that's the way that he's interpreting it to mean because he doesn't understand. He is not understanding what has actually happened here.
UK support page is here, and the US support page is here. According to D. Manthe, he simply started a live chat with a human, and they were able to get him unbanned straight away.
Which is why they were able to unban him, because he basically said, hey, you banned the wrong person. I'm not the one who copied the game. The other guy who owns it copied the game. And he proved that he has a legitimate copy to the Nintendo sales rep, and they unbanned it. So, yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like it was just we had a 50-50 chance of banning the right person, and we missed. We hit the wrong guy.
Although, naturally, you don't want to be doing that.
Which, I mean, good on them for unbanning him, I guess, but it still highlights a problem that they need to fix.
Every time you buy a new secondhand game, which, again, I don't think is going to happen every time. I think it's more for the unique cases of people that ripped it onto a MIG switch and then dumped it and then sold the game.
Okay, so he kind of gets it. He just doesn't understand the reason why this particular one got flagged. And I think it's because they both attempted to play the same copy of the game at the same time. And that threw up a red flag.
Which is still going to be happening.
Which means that Nintendo is not actually detecting the MIG switch. They're just detecting whether or not a game has been copied. And it can only then detect it if that game that's been copied is played at the same time on two separate consoles.
Happening, by the way. And the greater concern is the greater concern. And what I mean by that is, like, now people are going to be hesitant to even buy Switch 2 games.
You should be hesitant to buy Switch 2 in general, not just Switch 2 games, for many reasons, but this is just one of them. But yeah, you should all be hesitant. This is a terrible way to run your business. No one should be supporting these practices until they get their shit together, until they figure out a better way to do this.
Used. Which Nintendo probably doesn't care because they just want to sell the game the first time. But that also impacts the customer because now their game that they own is not valued as much on the secondhand market because of what Nintendo's doing to scare buyers away from buying used games. Not great.
I'm going to be charitable to Nintendo when I shouldn't. I don't think they're doing it. I don't think used games even came into the equation. I don't think that's what they were worried about. I think this is an unintended consequence that they're going to have to fix. I don't think they were trying to scare people away from used game sales. I think that they were trying to... Superman's call has appeared? What is this? I think that this is them just desperately trying to find the quickest fix possible to stop those MIG switches because that went viral on social media. People using MIG switches. So that's what they did. And this was... Their solution was just, hey, if you detect the same serial number being used on two consoles simultaneously, ban one of them. Or maybe they banned both, and the other guy just didn't get his unbanned and you didn't hear about his. They may have just banned both. Which is still the wrong answer, but it does mean that, like, you shouldn't... The chances of this happening to you if you buy a used game are honestly probably pretty rare.
Not great. And this is Reddit talking about it. The Switch 2 owner banned for playing secondhand Switch 1 games.
Plus, the majority of people who buy used games and like your casual gamers, they're not reading articles like this or social media or Reddit posts and stuff like this about it. They're probably not going to see these articles unless they make like the actual news, like mainstream media. If they're just not. Like your grandma's not going to gaming sites. Your mom and dad aren't going to gaming sites when they buy, their son or daughter or nephew or whatever. When they buy them a Switch game for their birthday, they're not going to check these sites, and they may choose to buy it used to save themselves some money. So I don't believe the purpose was to stop used game sales, because this would do a terrible job of that. Like, this would have to make mainstream media to get, because the normies buy the majority of the games. I'm sorry, the casuals are where the majority of your game sales are. That's just the truth. And if you don't, like, if it doesn't reach the normie ear, then it's not a problem.
So if I buy used games...
It's not a problem for Nintendo. Like, it's a problem for the gamer, but it's not a problem for them monetary-wise. So, like, it would be a terrible way to stop used game sales because of that. Am I making sense? I feel like I'm explaining this poorly.
Games from GameStop that happen to be copied to a MiG, I'm just effed. Guys know what a MiG is.
Yeah, if they well, you're not effed because they will unban you if you can prove your ownership. You're inconvenienced, I would say, not effed. If you're playing it off a MiG switch, it sounds like it might be effed.
It's a cartridge that fakes Switch 1 into thinking it's a legit cartridge. People can load an SD card on the MiG with game copies. So it's R4 from the DS? Yes, basically. And the risk here is you might buy a legitimate used game that someone has dumped and shared online. If Nintendo sees two Switches playing the same copy, this is what I was saying,
At the same time,
of the same
yes.
game at the same time, they
There it
ban
is.
both consoles.
Okay, so the stuff he's linking does explain it. So I put it together before he did, but yeah, you get the point. Okay, so I was right.
I don't think it even has to be at the same time, by the way.
I would argue it's probably at the same time. Otherwise, how would they know? How would they know that you didn't just play the game in your Switch and then 10 minutes later, even if you do them like back to back, how would they know that you didn't play the game in your Switch 10 minutes later, hand it off to a friend so you could play one of his games and you guys like trade games? Yeah, like how would they know the difference? They wouldn't.
By the way, I think that Nintendo has a system formula set up where it registers one of the serial numbers and has some way of knowing that it's been duplicated.
I think you're giving Nintendo too much credit. But okay, bud. I was about to say, for all of Nintendo's lifespan, they weren't able to do that with Switch 1s. It's just, yeah, two people playing at the same time would throw up a red flag, but how would they know? How would they even know that?
Somehow there's some sort of proprietary code that they understand that once it gets duplicated, that it reflects somehow on their system. And then
Nah.
it bans both consoles and anyone who plays a copy of that game from then on. Actually, you need to fear employees of stores like GameStop more than the normal gamer. A kid working at GameStop has more access to used games and can dump games on their MiG in the back office on their break. Good point.
That probably happens all the time.
No need to buy or trade them in. They just cart dump it and dump it. But they do it for their managers too. I never thought of that. That's
Yeah, that happened all the time. That happened back when I was working there. And they don't even have to go into the back room to do it. GameStop will let its employees take games home to try them after a certain length of time. So you can't take home like a brand new game, but after the game had been out for like 2 weeks or something, then you could take it home because they want their employees to play all the newest games. Or relatively new, not necessarily the day they come out, but 2 weeks after, so you can continue to sell the game and so you can understand it. So you could take it home for a week at a time. Basically, they would allow their employees to rent games from the store. You sign it out in a book, you take it home, you play it for a week, and you bring it back because they want you to be knowledgeable on the games you're trying to sell. So an employee would probably take the game home, copy it, bring it back the next day.
That's totally something that could happen.
And definitely does happen.
Probably does. I didn't even enter my mind. That's crazy. Yeah, because you can buy the MiG.
That's why GameStop stopped selling PC games. Back when I originally started working there, and I was originally working at EB Games. And then that company got bought out by GameStop, and GameStop took us over. And when GameStop took us over, they caught on real quick to the fact that people were copying PC games. They were checking them out, they were taking them home, they were installing them on their computers, so they were copying them and they were bringing them back. So that's why they just said we're not going to do used PC games anymore. That's why used PC games are no longer a thing.
Cart dump machine separately. I know it was hard to get, but they have it where you just plug the card in and it just dumps it, and then it saves it to a folder, and then you can put your MiG switch in and then drag it over and drop it onto the Switch. Yep, they're forcing everyone to rethink if they should buy a secondhand game or give Nintendo more money. Because on the off chance it's copied to your MiG, your $450 console is bricked. This is already not needed considering...
I'd say that the bigger problem is the fact that they can completely brick the console instead of just ban it from online services like they used to do. Like the normal way to ban a console. The fact that they've changed their wording to say that they can render the entire system inoperable instead of just its online functions is what should be illegal. Like, You can ban me from your service, but you shouldn't be able to render the hardware itself inoperable. That's ridiculous.
Switch 2 can already differentiate MIGs from real copies. They just punishing people for buying secondhand games.
I don't think that's what's happening. I think these guys are just, this all just sounds like fear mongering. I think Nintendo just fucked up. I think it had two people playing the game at the same time. It didn't know which one to ban, so it banned both. The legitimate person called in to say, hey, you banned me and I was playing a legitimate copy, and they unbanned them. They just took that risk. I think that's all that happened here. And I don't think this happens that often. In fact, as proof that it doesn't happen that often, we've only seen a total of one article about it. And it's referencing one individual instance of this happening. So it's so rare, it was article worthy. Why does no one ever think about that when they read these, when they read articles of shit that, to be like, why is, to be like, man, this must be pretty rare if it's newsworthy. Why does no one ever think about that? They just go, oh, this is happening all the time. Like, well, then why is, if it happens all the time, then they wouldn't be writing articles about it because everybody would already know about it. It's the same thing with like cops when they're like, oh, these cops are trigger happy. They're out there shooting everybody. I'm like, there's a reason why cop shootings are newsworthy. And that's because they actually, statistically speaking, don't happen that often. Sorry, they don't. There are millions of cop stops per year, cop traffic stops, cop calls per year. And like 1% of those, which is still a lot. That's still, you know, a couple 100,000. But it's still like 1% of the total number of calls might end in a shooting. But people don't go, oh, well, the fact that it's making the news must mean it's pretty rare. They take away the opposite. Man, I keep seeing these in the news all the time. This must be all stops. It's no. These make the news because they don't happen that often. That's why. Things that don't happen often make the news. You're thinking about it backwards.
At this point, in my humble opinion, which, yeah, chance of buying secondhand copy cartridges is probably less than 0.1%, which
yeah, it's going to be extremely rare.
I'd say, yeah, it's probably low. Many people pointed out 5% is a lot, which I know, but I just put up a random number because percentage is not my point. Fact that buying secondhand games have a non-zero chance of breaking a $450 console, but it would push a lot of users into buying new copies. Console banning in the Switch 2 is
not a lot. A lot of Redditors, a lot of you guys, but again, the average video game consumer doesn't go on Reddit, doesn't even know what Dexerto is, never heard of Kotaku. You know, like they're not looking at any of this shit. They're just going to buy the game, take it home, and play it. And as long as they don't ever end up with a problem, like getting banned or something they have to call customer support for, then they never know any of this stuff even exists. So I don't think it'll affect used game sales all that much. It might have a small hit, but not anything noteworthy.
Way heavier than Switch 1, considering Switch 2 is more than twice the price of Switch 1. In my country, I could buy 3 Switch Lites and a game for 1 Switch 2 console. And game key cards that only started on Switch 2 because Nintendo refused to make smaller cartridges need internet. And a pretty banger reply here. Easy. Don't give Nintendo your money. You don't need that $450 game console. You'll live. Can confirm. Didn't buy a Switch 2. Am still alive. Counterpoint. My grandmother didn't buy a Switch 2. And she died. And Jeffrey Epstein also didn't buy a Switch 2. And we all know what happened to him. I mean, he's probably in witness protection playing a Switch 2 right now, watching me, looking up and smiling.
Okay, I get the joke he's going for, but man, did it not land. Holy shit.
To be fair. But yes, the Switch 2 is a mess of a situation. I'll tell you guys straight up, my experience with it in so far is...
Oh, cool, he bought one. So after all his speeches, and all the things he's saying. Yeah, he's one of those guys that will complain about it online, but still give the company his money. And you probably did it for quote-unquote content, right? So you can justify it in your brain.
I enjoy it for what it is. It's not a groundbreaking console. It's not gonna blow your socks off when you start playing it, but it does exactly what it advertised. And honestly, for me,
Be a Switch Pro because it's a Switch Pro. Nintendo pulled an Overwatch. It made minor adjustments to the original thing and slapped a fucking 2 behind it.
I play my original Switch so much that my hands cramped with it, and it's like I have big hands.
That's not because you played it a lot. Mine will cramp after 10 minutes, and I don't even have big hands. It's just because the original Switch is not very ergonomic. It is uncomfortable as fuck to hold in handheld mode without some kind of grip attached to it, like to buy some third-party thing. It's just like holding just a brick. Like those corners are barely curved, and there's nothing. Yeah, there's no ergonomics. They're uncomfortable. It's just uncomfortable.
So my biggest motivation to get a Switch 2 was bigger controller, bigger screen. I'm happy as a clam with that.
Actually, smaller would be more comfortable. I never ran into problems like this playing my 3DS like I do playing my Switch. Oh my god, dude. He just slid directly underneath that. Holy fuck. God, I'm so sick of these movement-based shooter games where we don't go by whether or not we can shoot. We go by who can jump and do the most craziest shit. Ugh. I'm so sick of this game style. And it's every fucking shooter now. But anyway, yeah, bigger doesn't mean more comfortable. You can hold your phone like this for a very long time and probably not be uncomfortable. See, it fits. Fits right in the L shape of my hand here. Whereas the Switch is too big. So holding it becomes uncomfortable. Whereas this just fits right into the curvature of my hand pretty perfectly. I can grip it at the top. I can hold it like this. I never ran into problems playing my 3DS, my 2DS. 2DS, 3DS, regular DS, DS Lite. Even back in the day, Game Boy Advance. None of those. But something as big as the Switch. You play it. Like, here's my Switch Joy-Con. It has a grip on the back of it. It's got a grip on the back of it. So I got something I can put into the palm of my hand and just fucking hold. Because it's too big. I can't secure the top of it with my fingers like I can the 2DS. Like, I can put them on the triggers, but I don't feel like I'm holding the console, and it weighs so much more too, and the weight plays a heavy factor in it. It's just, they're not very ergonomic systems. They're not comfortable to hold.
But for people that are just like, nah, I don't really play my Switch anymore. I play just PC now or something like that. Then it's not necessary. And I think Nintendo probably knows that. And they
should. In all honesty, I've gotten so much more. Mortal Kombat stuff's back. In all honesty, I've gotten so much more use out of my Steam Deck than I have out of my Switch. It's just so much more I can do on it. Like, there's this. My Switch One. I've got 2 Switch ones. I've got an OLED and I've got a hacked one that I can load games onto. I don't need a MIG switch. And even with the hacked one, like, it's still just collecting dust. It's just sitting on the dock. I haven't taken it out in a very long time. My wife and my kids play it. I haven't actually played on my Switch in a very long time. I still play on my 2DS though, because I think it has better games. The best version of Mario Golf in existence was on the 3DS. The Metallica stuff's back. I got the one I wanted though. I still play my 3DS because it has better games on it. So, I don't think there's enough on Switch 2 to warrant the purchase right now. You've got 1 or 2 exclusive games. The rest are just enhanced version of Switch 1 games. Quote unquote enhanced, which, I mean, it's the same kind of enhancements you could get by putting a PS4 game onto your PS5 and put it on the SSD instead of on a regular hard drive. Just doing that will make the game run better and faster because that's just how SSDs work. Like, play Fallout 76, which we play on this stream because it is a good game now. Play Fallout 76 on a PS4 and then load it onto your SSD and play it on your PS5. It is a completely different fucking experience. It feels like an enhanced game, like the Switch 2 enhanced sports. You get a better frame rate, you get more consistent frame rate, you get less bugs, everything loads in faster, there's no more pop in. Like the game feels like a next gen version of that game. It's not though. It's just loading faster because it's on a faster version of the hard drive. It's just on a faster memory source. And that alone makes a difference. So, playing Switch 1 games on the Switch 2, I think you'll get a similar experience. The frame rate will be more consistent. The resolution may be a tad bit higher. It may be a bit more crisp visual-wise because they don't have to, lower the resolution to maintain the frame rates like they do on the Switch 1. But that's it. It's not like they went in and actually changed anything in the game. The game just runs better because it's on better hardware.
Should probably be very concerned because I have a feeling that this is something that the way that they're treating their customers, it's just turning people away in droves. And when they all leave, they're going to have no one to blame but themselves. But anyways, I'll leave that one there.
All right. So that's where he left that there. So we're going to pull up the stuff that he showed real quick. Just to read the actual article and see what the hell he's talking about, because he did not fully understand what we were looking at there. New window. All right, yeah, so this was it. It was this one here. Okay, so it was this one here. Switch 2 owner banned for playing secondhand Switch 1 games. And he's saying that as if it happened more than once, though, because it uses the term games. New concerns have arisen over Nintendo's strict policies over how you use the Switch 2, although for the moment it does not seem that there's a solution. Nintendo gets away with a lot of negative consumer practices purely because their games and consoles are so popular, but it's because their fan base doesn't know how to say no to them. Okay, they're like a battered housewife. Nintendo fans don't realize they're in an abusive relationship. But there's already been concern about the ability to put the Switch 2 permanently offline if you use mod cards, the MIG switch. Which, for those of you who don't know what that is, because he didn't show it, I'll show it here. Alright. Switch MIG. So, the MIG flash... This is the official website for it. I probably shouldn't even be going to that. So this is where you would go to buy it. Easy backup, plug and play. Where to buy? Where can you buy if you're in the United States? MIG Flash Store website. MIG Flash US. Here we go. Let's go there. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. And it comes with this piece right here. Plug that into your computer, put the MIG card in it. You load the games onto that. That's the actual cartridge. See, it's got a little slot here that you put an SD card in, like you put into your phone or into the Switch, and that's how you do it. And then the dumper. So it looks like it's $65, less than the cost of one Switch game to buy a cartridge, where you can load all your Switch games onto it. And then for $65 more, you can buy the ability to dump your own games. So that's what he's talking about. MIG cards, which are often used for playing pirated games. Again, their intended purpose because you're supposed to buy the adapter and dump your own games onto it so you can leave your games on the shelf and carry around this one cartridge to have your entire library with you without having to buy digital games. It's a way to buy physical games but still have all the benefits of a digital game. That's its intended purpose. So the benefits of a digital game is, I get my whole library on the console. I don't have to carry a bunch of cartridges around. But what if you want the cartridges because you want a physical collection in case Nintendo servers ever go down and you lose access to that game because now you can't re-download it? You want to be able to actually physically own that game. The idea behind the MIG card is best of both worlds. That's its intended purpose. Not piracy, its intended purpose. I'm sure some people use it for piracy, but the reason it exists and why it is legally allowed to exist is so that you can have a physical shelf full of games but not have to carry them all with you if you want to take your library on the go. So you can have all the benefits of digital while still owning a physical copy. That's the reason. That's why it's legally allowed to exist. Now, a different problem has arisen from a Switch 2 owner that claims he was banned for using secondhand Switch 1 games that he bought from Facebook Marketplace. Nintendo apparently realized they were secondhand when he attempted to download patches for them. When starting them up on the Switch 2, at this point he claims he was banned, and while it's not something that's been wildly reported by others, it does raise obvious concerns about the future. I mean, yes, it does raise a concern, but the fact that it's not widely reported means that it's a rare case. And in that rare case, I would argue it's probably because he was playing that copy of the game he bought from Facebook at the same time that the owner he bought it from was playing their copied version on a MIG card. So him and that person he bought it from were playing the same game, literally the same copy of the same game at the same time. Which, you know, would throw up red flags for Nintendo servers and would get them both banned. According to Reddit, they were able to unban themselves after speaking to Nintendo support. Yeah, then you call support, show them how you got the game and that you own it. The other person, they probably banned both of them, and the other person remained banned. Expert exclusive gaming analysis. Sign up for that. Oh, God. I know I don't want to sign up for your thing. Seems that the problem is indeed to do with piracy, as according to reader Dalen Gould, the MIG Flash Dumper mod cart copies all of the information on the cartridge, including its unique identification number. So what's likely to have happened is that the seller of the secondhand game copied them before selling them and continued to use them online. When Nintendo detected the same ID number being used twice, it knew one of them was a pirated copy. But when the situation with Facebook Marketplace was explained, it relented. Yeah, so it banned both of them because it didn't know which one was legit. The legit person called and banned the legit person. If neither of them called, then they probably would have both stayed banned, which is the problem. So, yeah, I would say that's probably the more likely situation. So that's the original article. So he probably should have read the whole thing before reacting to it on stream, or I don't know. Like, he just didn't understand it. Like, I didn't need to read all the way down to this part. I didn't need to read all the way down to this part to understand it. I kind of just already knew what had happened. Because I would have heard about it before now if it was this, like, anytime someone's buying a used game, you would have heard mass reports of it. It would be widely a problem. But it wasn't. So, okie dokie. Well, we're going to move into the next piece of content now.